The moment Sarah threw champagne at the dirty girl's face, she had no idea she'd just humiliated the woman who paid for her $1 million wedding. "Security! Get this beggar out of my wedding!" Sarah screamed, her white dress sparkling under the crystal lights. The ballroom fell silent. 300 guests stopped dancing. All eyes turned to the small woman in torn clothes standing by the golden doors. But here's what Sarah didn't know, and what would destroy her perfect day in the next 5 minutes. The woman she just called a beggar owned the hotel. She owned the flowers. She owned everything Sarah thought was hers. Her name was Amara Andrews, and she'd been missing for 15 years. 2 hours earlier, Sarah Williams was living her dream. The Grand Palace Hotel buzzed with excitement. Roses covered every table. Diamonds hung from the ceiling. The cake alone cost $50,000. "This wedding will make history," Sarah told her friend Lisa, fixing her makeup one last time. "David's family has money, but today I become royalty." Sarah had no idea who was really paying for her fairy tale. David Andrews stood at the altar, handsome in his black suit. He came from old money. The Andrews family owned half the city. Hotels, banks, shopping malls. Their name was on everything. But David's family had a secret. A dark one. 15 years ago, his little sister Amara disappeared. She was only 8 years old. One day she was playing in their garden. The next day she was gone. The police searched for months. They found nothing. David's mother died from the grief. His father, Robert Andrews, never recovered. He became cold, distant. He threw money at everything, hoping it would fill the hole in his heart. But money can't bring back the dead. Or so they thought. The wedding ceremony was perfect. Sarah walked down the aisle like a queen. Her dress cost more than most people's houses. Every guest whispered about how lucky she was. "You may kiss the bride," the priest said. David kissed Sarah, but his eyes looked sad. Sarah was too busy smiling for the cameras to notice. The reception started with music and dancing. Rich people laughed and drank expensive wine. Sarah felt like she was floating on air. "I can't believe this is my life now," she whispered to her sister Emma. "You deserve it," Emma replied, but something in her voice sounded strange. The truth was, Emma knew something Sarah didn't. Something that would change everything. Outside the hotel, a small figure watched from the shadows. Amara Andrews had been living on the streets for 15 years. She looked nothing like the little girl who disappeared. Her hair was dirty and cut short. Her clothes were old and torn. Her hands shook from hunger. But her eyes were the same bright green her father used to love. She'd been watching the Andrews family for months, following David, learning about his life, about his wedding, about the woman who was about to become her sister-in-law. Sarah Williams had no idea that her perfect wedding was paid for by the girl she was about to humiliate. You see, Amara wasn't really a beggar. Not anymore. 3 months ago, something incredible happened. A lawyer found her living under a bridge. He'd been searching for her for years. He had news that changed everything. Amara's grandfather had died and left her everything. Billions of dollars. Hotels, companies, land. More money than she could count. But there was a condition. She had to prove who she was. She had to come home. The problem was, home didn't want her back. "There's someone at the door," the security guard told David during the party. "Tell them we're closed for a private event," David replied, not looking up from his champagne. "She says she's family, sir. She says her name is Amara." The glass fell from David's hand. It shattered on the marble floor. "That's impossible," David whispered. "Amara is dead." But his heart was racing. Because deep down, he'd never stopped hoping. "Should I let her in?" David looked around the ballroom. His new wife was dancing with her friends. His father was talking to important business people. Everyone was happy. No, David said, but his voice cracked. Send her away. The security guard nodded and walked back to the door. But Amara didn't leave. She'd waited 15 years for this moment. She wasn't going to give up now. Sarah was having the time of her life. She danced with David, posed for pictures, and accepted congratulations from everyone. Mrs. Andrews, people kept saying. How wonderful. She loved the sound of it. Mrs. Andrews. It made her feel powerful. But her happiness was about to end. Because Amara had found another way in. She knew this hotel better than anyone. After all, she owned it now. She knew about the service entrance in the back. She knew which hallways led to the ballroom. And she knew exactly what she was going to do. 15 years of living on the streets had made Amara strong. She'd learned to fight for every meal, every safe place to sleep. She'd survived things that would break most people. But nothing had prepared her for seeing her brother again. The moment Amara stepped into the ballroom, everything changed. The music seemed to get quieter. The laughter felt forced. It was like the room could sense that something was wrong. She stood by the golden doors, small and dirty among all the beautiful people. Her clothes were torn. Her face was thin from years of not eating enough. She looked like she belonged on the street, not in a palace. But her eyes were fierce. They burned with 15 years of pain and anger. Sarah noticed her first. "Oh my God," Sarah said to Lisa. "Look at that homeless person. How did she get in here?" Sarah marched across the room, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Her white dress flowed behind her like she was a warrior going to battle. She had no idea she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. "Excuse me," Sarah said loudly, so everyone could hear. "This is a private event. You can't be here." Amara looked up at her. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just stared at this beautiful woman in the expensive dress. "I'm looking for my family," Amara said quietly. Sarah laughed. It was a cruel sound. "Your family? Look around. Do you see anyone here who looks like you?" The guests started to gather around them. They whispered and pointed. Some took pictures with their phones. David was on the other side of the room, talking to his father. He hadn't seen what was happening yet. "Listen," Sarah continued, getting meaner. "I don't know how you got in here, but this is my wedding day. The most important day of my life. And I'm not going to let some street person ruin it." Amara's hands started to shake. Not from hunger this time. From anger. "Your wedding day," she repeated slowly. "That's right. I'm marrying David Andrews. Do you know who that is? His family owns half this city." "I know," Amara whispered. Something in her voice made Sarah pause. But she was too angry to stop. "Then you know you don't belong here. This wedding cost more money than you'll see in your entire life." That's when David finally saw them. His face went white. His mouth fell open. For a second, he couldn't breathe. Because despite the dirty clothes and the thin face, despite 15 years of hell, he recognized those eyes. "Amara," he whispered. But Sarah didn't hear him. She was too busy destroying her own life. "Security!" Sarah screamed. "Get this beggar out of my wedding!" She grabbed a glass of champagne from a nearby table. Before anyone could stop her, she threw it right at Amara's face. The golden liquid dripped down Amara's cheeks. It stung her eyes. It soaked into her already dirty clothes. The ballroom went completely silent. And that's when Amara smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just been given exactly what they needed. "Thank you," Amara said softly. "For what?" Sarah snapped. "For showing everyone exactly who you are." Amara reached into her torn jacket and pulled out a piece of paper. It was old and wrinkled, but the words were clear. "My name is Amara Andrews," she said, her voice getting stronger. "And I own this hotel. Sarah laughed again. You're crazy. But some people in the crowd weren't laughing anymore. Especially the older guests who remembered the Andrews family tragedy. I own the flowers on your tables, Amara continued. I own the champagne you just threw at me. I own the dress you're wearing. That's impossible, Sarah said, but her voice was getting smaller. Because I paid for this wedding, Amara said. Every single dollar came from my trust fund. David was walking toward them now, pushing through the crowd. His face looked like he'd seen a ghost. You're lying, Sarah said desperately. Amara held up the paper. This is my inheritance document. Signed 3 months ago. I am the sole heir to the Andrews fortune. The crowd gasped. Phones started flashing as people took pictures and videos. But you're dead, someone whispered. I was supposed to be, Amara said, and her voice turned cold. Someone made sure of that. She looked directly at one person in the crowd. A woman with silver hair and expensive jewelry. The woman's face went pale. Hello, Aunt Radina, Amara said. Did you think I'd never come home? The woman named Radina started backing toward the exit. But it was too late. Because Amara wasn't done talking. 15 years ago, my Aunt Radina had me kidnapped, Amara announced to the entire wedding. She wanted my father's money for herself. She thought if I disappeared, she'd inherit everything. David stopped walking. His face was filled with shock and rage. She left me in a place where no one would ever find me. Where I'd die slowly and quietly. Sarah was staring at Amara like she was seeing her for the first time. But I didn't die, Amara continued. I survived. I lived on the streets. I fought for every day. And I never stopped remembering who I was. Radina was almost at the door now. But security guards were moving to block her path. And 3 months ago, when I finally proved my identity, I learned something interesting, Amara said, her voice getting louder. I learned that my dear aunt had been planning another wedding. My brother's wedding to a woman she handpicked. Sarah felt like the floor was falling away under her feet. A woman who would help her steal what was left of my family's money. All eyes turned to Sarah. Her beautiful face was twisted with confusion and fear. That's not true, Sarah said weakly. Isn't it? Amara asked. Tell me, Sarah, who introduced you to my brother? Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Who suggested this hotel for your wedding? Who helped you pick your dress? Who's been whispering in your ear about how to handle David's money once you were married? The truth hit Sarah like a truck. Every romantic moment, every coincidence, every piece of luck that led to this day, it had all been planned. She'd been used. I didn't know, Sarah whispered. Maybe not, Amara said, and for the first time, her voice had a little kindness in it. But you showed your true heart when you called me a beggar. When you threw that drink at me. When you treated me like trash just because of how I looked. David finally reached them. He stood between his wife and his sister, looking lost and broken. Amara, he said, and his voice cracked like he was a little boy again. Is it really you? She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in 15 years. Hello, David, she said softly. And then David Andrews, heir to billions, CEO of half the city's biggest companies, started to cry. He fell to his knees right there on the ballroom floor in his expensive suit. He reached out to touch his sister's face like he couldn't believe she was real. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I should have kept looking. I should have never stopped. The entire wedding party watched as brother and sister reunited after 15 years of hell. But the night wasn't over yet. Because someone was screaming by the door. Radina had been caught by security. She was fighting like a wild animal, trying to escape. You can't prove anything, she shouted. She's lying. She's just some crazy homeless person. Amara walked toward her aunt slowly. Each step echoed in the silent ballroom. Actually, she said, I can prove everything. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. Radina's voice filled the room, clear as day. The girl has to disappear permanently. Make sure no one ever finds the body. The recording continued with more details about the kidnapping, about poisoning David's mother, about the plan to steal the family fortune. Radina's face crumpled. She knew she was finished. I did it for the family, she screamed. That money was being wasted. Robert was weak after his wife died. Someone had to take control. You destroyed my family, Amara said quietly. You stole my childhood. You killed my mother with your poison. You made my father believe his daughter was dead. Where is he? David asked suddenly. Where's father? Amara's face went sad. He's in the hospital. He had a heart attack when I told him I was alive. He couldn't handle the shock. David closed his eyes in pain. But he's okay, Amara said quickly. He's going to recover. He wants to see you. Sarah stood in the middle of the chaos, still in her beautiful wedding dress, still wearing her diamond tiara. But she looked small and lost. What happens now? She asked quietly. Amara looked at her for a long moment. Now, she said, you get to choose who you really are. Sarah looked at Amara's outstretched hand and made a choice that shocked everyone in the room. She took it. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry for everything. But Amara wasn't done with her surprises yet. There's something else you need to know, she said, looking directly at David. About why I really came back tonight. The ballroom held its breath. I'm dying. The words hit David like a bullet to the chest. What? He gasped. Amara's hand shook as she pulled out a hospital bracelet from her pocket. The doctors say I have 6 months. Maybe less. 15 years on the streets. My body couldn't handle it anymore. Sarah felt her heart break. Here she was, worried about her ruined wedding, and this woman was facing death. But I had to see you one more time, Amara continued, her voice getting weaker. I had to make sure the truth came out. I had to protect our father's legacy. David grabbed his sister's shoulders. No. We'll get the best doctors. We'll fix this. I just got you back. I can't lose you again. David, Amara said softly. Some things can't be fixed with money. That's when Sarah did something that surprised even herself. She took off her diamond tiara and placed it on Amara's dirty hair. You're the real Andrew's princess, Sarah said. You always were. The crowd watched in amazement as the bride crowned the beggar. But the night was far from over. Suddenly, the ballroom doors burst open again. Robert Andrews stood there, leaning heavily on a walking stick. His face was pale from his heart attack, but his eyes blazed with life. Where is she? He demanded. Where's my daughter? 15 years of grief had aged him terribly. His hair was white, his face lined with sorrow. But when he saw Amara standing there in her torn clothes and Sarah's tiara, he looked like a young man again. Daddy! Amara whispered. Robert dropped his walking stick and ran to her. He didn't care about his weak heart. He didn't care about the 300 people watching. He only cared about holding his little girl. They fell into each other's arms, sobbing. 15 years of pain poured out of both of them. I never stopped looking, Robert cried. I spent millions. I hired the best detectives. I never gave up hope. I know, Daddy. I know. The entire wedding party was crying now. Even the waiters had tears in their eyes. But Radina was still screaming by the door. This is all fake, she shrieked. She's not really dying. She's just trying to make you feel sorry for her. Robert's face turned dark with rage. He'd never looked more dangerous. You, he said, walking slowly toward his sister-in-law. You did this. You destroyed my family. I saved this family. Radina shot back. You were weak. After Margaret died, you couldn't make decisions anymore. Someone had to take control. You killed my wife. I freed you from her. She was holding you back. The security guards had to hold Robert back from attacking her. And you stole my daughter. I removed an obstacle. The money should have been mine anyway. Where did you take her? Robert demanded. What did you do to my little girl? Radina's face twisted with evil satisfaction. I left her in the worst place I could find. A place where no one cares if street children live or die. Amara stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but strong. She left me at an orphanage run by criminals, she said. They beat us, starved us, sold some of the kids to bad people. Sarah gasped. She couldn't imagine surviving something so horrible. I escaped when I was 12, Amara continued. But I had nowhere to go. So I lived on the streets. I ate from trash cans. I slept under bridges. I did whatever I had to do to survive. How did you remember us? David asked, his voice breaking. I never forgot. Even when I was so hungry I couldn't think straight. Even when people told me I was crazy. I remembered Daddy's laugh. I remembered you teaching me to ride my bike. I remembered Mommy singing me to sleep. Robert was crying so hard he could barely stand. I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry I couldn't find you. It's not your fault, Daddy. It's hers. All eyes turned back to Radina, who was still fighting against the security guards. You want to know the worst part? Amara asked, walking closer to her aunt. I forgive you. Radina stopped struggling. What? I forgive you. Because hating you was killing me. And I don't have enough time left to waste it on hate. The power of those words silenced the entire room. But Amara wasn't done. However, she continued, forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. She pulled out another document from her jacket. I've already called the police. They're on their way. But first, I want everyone here to know the full truth. She looked around the ballroom at all the rich, powerful people. My aunt didn't just kidnap me for money. She was working with others. People in this room. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Everyone started looking at each other suspiciously. The Andrews family trusted the wrong people. Business partners who smiled to our faces while stealing from us. Friends who pretended to care while they plotted against us. She pointed to a man in an expensive suit near the bar. Mr. Johnson, you've been stealing from our construction company for 5 years. The man's face went white. He tried to run, but security was already moving toward him. Mrs. Patterson, Amara pointed to an elegant woman in pearls, you've been selling our business secrets to our competitors. The woman fainted. One by one, Amara called out the traitors. People who had been at their family dinners. People who had bought birthday presents for David. People who had hugged Robert at his wife's funeral. How do you know all this? David asked in amazement. Because for 3 months, I've been investigating everyone in our lives. I hired the best private detectives in the world. I wanted to know who we could trust. She smiled at Sarah. And you know what I found out about you? Sarah's heart stopped. She was sure Amara was about to destroy her too. You're innocent. You really didn't know about Radina's plan. You fell in love with my brother honestly. The only thing you're guilty of is judging people by how they look. Sarah started crying again. I'm so ashamed. Good, Amara said. Shame means you can change. The police arrived and started arresting people. Radina screamed as they put handcuffs on her. This isn't over, she yelled. I'll fight this in court. I'll destroy all of you. Actually, Amara said calmly, it is over. Because I have video evidence of everything. She held up a small camera. I've been wearing this for months. Every conversation, every confession, every crime, it's all recorded. Radina's face crumpled as she realized she was finished. As the police led her away, she looked back one last time. You think you've won? she spat at Amara. "But you're still going to die. And when you do, all that money will just go to someone else anyway." Amara smiled sadly. "You're right. But at least it won't go to you." As the chaos died down and the criminals were taken away, the remaining guests didn't know what to do. The wedding was clearly over, but no one wanted to leave. David looked lost. His wedding was ruined. His wife was in shock. His sister was dying. His whole life had been turned upside down in one night. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "You love Sarah?" Amara asked. "Yes. And Sarah, do you love him?" Sarah looked at David through her tears. "More than anything. But I don't know if he can forgive me for what I said to you." Amara looked back and forth between them. "You know what I learned in 15 years on the streets," she said. "Life is too short to waste on pride. Too short to hold grudges. Too short to let fear stop you from loving people." She took both their hands and put them together. "David, Sarah made a mistake. But her heart is good. I can see it now. Sarah, my brother has been hurt by a lot of people he trusted. But he's still capable of love. Don't let my aunt's poison ruin that." She looked around the ruined ballroom, overturned tables, spilled champagne, shocked faces. "This isn't the wedding you planned," she said. "But maybe it's the one you needed." David squeezed Sarah's hand. "Will you still marry me? Even after all this craziness?" Sarah laughed through her tears. "Are you kidding? This is the most exciting wedding in history." And right there, in the middle of the chaos, they kissed. But Amara had one more surprise. "Actually," she said, "I lied about something." Everyone froze. "I'm not dying." The silence was deafening. "What?" Robert gasped. "I mean, I was sick. Very sick. But 3 months ago, when I came into my inheritance, I used some of that money to get the best medical treatment in the world. I'm getting better." David stared at her in shock. "Why would you lie about that?" "Because I needed to see who you all really were. I needed to know if you cared about me as a person, or just as an heir to a fortune." She looked at Sarah. "You could have walked away when you heard I was dying. You could have protected yourself. But you didn't. You showed compassion." She looked at David. "You were ready to spend everything to save me. That's love." She looked at Robert. "And you, Daddy. You held me like I was still your little girl. Money didn't matter to you at all." Robert was laughing and crying at the same time. "You little troublemaker. You scared me to death." "I had to be sure," Amara said. "Because now I know who my real family is." 6 months later, things had changed completely. Radina was in prison, along with 8 other people who had been stealing from the Andrews family. The family fortune was bigger than ever, now that the thieves were gone. David and Sarah had gotten remarried, a small ceremony with just family, where Amara was the maid of honor. Sarah had started a charity to help homeless children, inspired by Amara's story. And Amara? She was living with her father, slowly healing from her 15 years of trauma. She was learning to trust again, learning to live in a house instead of on the streets, learning to be a daughter again. But the most important thing she learned was this: money couldn't buy back lost time, but love could heal anything. One evening, the 3 of them sat in the garden where Amara used to play as a child. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come to the wedding?" Amara asked. "You would have found another way," David said confidently. "You're the strongest person I know." "The bravest," Sarah added. She and Amara had become best friends. "The smartest," Robert said, hugging his daughter close. Amara smiled, looking up at the stars. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said. "All those years, I dreamed of coming home. I thought home was this house or this garden, or having money again. And now?" Sarah asked. "Now I know home isn't a place. Home is the people who love you no matter what. even when you're covered in dirt and drinking champagne off the floor of their wedding." They all laughed. "Speaking of which," David said, "I never did get to eat that $50,000 cake." "Good thing," Amara grinned. "I may have owned that wedding, but I definitely didn't approve that cake budget." And as they sat there together, finally complete after 15 years apart, they knew that no amount of money could ever be worth more than this moment. The beggar had come home. The princess had found her crown. And the family that was torn apart by greed and betrayal had been healed by the most powerful force in the world: love. The end. But remember, the way you treat people when you think they have nothing says everything about who you really are. Because you never know, that beggar might just be royalty in disguise. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What did this story teach you? Please drop your thoughts in the comments section. I enjoy reading every single one of them. There's another very interesting story coming your way in just a few days. So, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell so you'll be the first to know when it drops. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Someone out there may need to hear this. Thank you so much for watching to the end. See you in the next story.